Hello everyone and welcome to my home. For the past 2.5 years, I have lived in a over 20-year-old truck camper. It is a 2000 Lance Lite 825. It's 8 feet 6 inches long and it fits in the back of my short bed truck. Today is not a tour of the truck camper. I have done an extensive tour. If you'd like to click this link here, or I'll also link it below, you can see a full tour of the camper. I wanted to talk about what it is like to live in an old truck camper, some of the challenges, some of the pluses, and that is what we're going to talk about today. It is a rainy day here at my current camp. Winter is definitely on the way. I've been experiencing more storms and rain on the road, and there's been snow in the local mountains, much needed precipitation. It's a good day to stay inside and talk to you all. First, we'll address the obvious. It is tiny. It is a very tiny space. It is smaller than the tiniest tiny home. I've had people come in here who said that it's actually smaller than what they thought. I guess with some of the camera angles I get, it appears larger, but it's a small space. I think that for me, living in here alone is, comfortable. I've gotten used to it. But having two people in here full-time especially, it gets pretty snug. I have had guests and that's worked out okay. But I can see that maybe having another person in here full-time would be a little bit of a challenge. If you're not a regular viewer of the channel, I am a backpacker. I was a backpacker and a hiker before I hit the road full-time, and what that taught me was how little I really need to live. It taught me a very minimalist way of living, that I could carry everything that I needed to live on my back. So that really prepared me for living this type of a lifestyle. It is incredibly minimalist. You have to really downsize in order to fit all of your belongings, if you're living full-time, into the camper and your vehicle. If you're not okay living in small spaces, this probably isn't a lifestyle that would work for you. Today I want to talk about the challenges and the pluses of living in this specific old truck camper. When I bought it, it was used. I bought it in 2019 and it was quite dated. It was very clean, very, very clean, but it definitely was dated. It definitely had a 90s flair. It still has a lot of original parts to it. Let me show you what's original. This blue upholstery is original. I actually made those curtains with my mom, but those valances are also original. You can tell they look pretty dated. The cabinetry finishing is all original. You can see it has kind of that gold border on there. That's a little bit dated there. And then this wallpaper is also original. Definitely has kind of a funky look to it. Originally, when I purchased the camper, I wanted to do a complete overhaul and a complete remodel. Unfortunately, my timeline to hit the road full time kept getting pushed back, and I really got to the point where I was just on a deadline where I needed to move out of my apartment. I had already given notice and I just needed to do the minimal amount that I could do before hitting the road. So I made it homey. I think I worked with what I had to do the best I could, and I think it looks very cute. Maybe at some point, if I ever find the time, I will eventually do that complete remodel, but until then, it feels like home to me. It's always been very important to me to make any place that I've lived in feel like a home, so I always strive to give it that homey, comfy feel. The kitchen is an area I did do some work on. It had a hideous wallpaper, worse than what I just showed you, so I painted over that and then put that backsplash behind the stove, and it turned out really nice. I believe that this is one of the smallest campers that Lance makes, and because of its compact size, it does not have an oven. So I do miss having an oven and not being able to bake. But I am so impressed with an engineering that is involved in making something like this that can fit in the back of a truck that you can actually live out of. It's just amazing. It has really everything I need. Another thing I did was I painted the bottom of the dinette this red color, and I also replaced the floor. The floor was just an original, very 90s looking linoleum, and I put this wood laminate flooring in. I was definitely going for a cabin-y kind of vibe. Even though the truck camper is over 20 years old, I didn't want it to look like it stepped out of 1999. Another challenge of living in an older truck camper is this old refrigerator. It still works, but it is tiny. I do need to go get some more groceries. I can only fit maybe a week and a half's worth of groceries in here at a time. Because the refrigerator is over 20 years old, it is quite finicky. It can take me multiple times to try to get it ignited. I normally run it on propane because I am usually not hooked up to hookups. It is a three-way fridge, so you can run it on AC power, DC power, or propane. And most of the time I'm out boondocking, so I'm running it on propane, which means I have to ignite it. Last year, my piezo button on there no longer worked to ignite it, and I found a repair shop in Tillamook, Oregon. It was right across from the Tillamook Creamery, and they did not have the part, so they had to order it, and they allowed me to stay in their parking lot. They were so nice, and sleep there for free until we waited till the part came in. I was able to walk right across the street and get ice cream and macaroni and cheese at the Tillamook Creamery, and we got it taken care of. It still can be finicky. It's lately been more finicky than it has in quite some time. I also need to occasionally blow out the flue outside. The flue can get caked with dust and dirt, and I learned how to do that on YouTube. So occasionally I will go out and do that and get that cleaned out, and that usually helps for a while. It's still running. I'm not going to replace it until it completely dies because they are quite expensive for new ones. They're about, I think, over $1,000 to replace this tiny little, it's more than a house refrigerator for a full-size refrigerator. So yeah, it's not going to be replacing until it completely dies, and knock on wood, that doesn't happen for a while. And speaking of propane, another challenge, I have been asked a lot why I use this Mr. Buddy heater, and I've been asked if I have a furnace here in the camper. I do. Unfortunately, I only have the capacity to use a 4-gallon propane tank. That propane tank needs to be used to run my 2-burner stove, to run my refrigerator, and to heat my water for my showers. If I were also to use it to run the furnace and heat the camper, I would run out of propane really, really quickly. So for me, it's just better to get the small bottles for my Mr. Buddy heater. And I'm looking at heater options. Somebody sent me, a very kind subscriber sent me a diesel heater quite a while ago, and I still have not had that installed. I'm looking at some options for heating other than this, because the little bottles of propane can be costly as well. But that is why I do use my Mr. Buddy heater. You know, everything out here in living in this truck camper is in limited supply. Water, propane, you know, energy. If there's no sun, like on a day like today, there isn't any sun, so my solar isn't working at its full capacity. So that is something that is a challenge about living in an old truck camper, or an RV probably in general, is just that everything is in limited supply. My tanks here, water tanks here, are very small because it's a small camper. So my freshwater tank is 18 gallons, my black tank is 10 gallons, and my gray water is 11 gallons. My shower and my toilet both empty into my black tank, so that can fill up pretty quickly. Managing my resources is also a challenge. It's definitely something that I constantly have to keep an eye on, as far as making sure that I have water, my tanks aren't filling up, I have enough propane to run everything that I need to run in my camper. And it's not like when you live at home and you live in a sticks and bricks home anyhow, and you have unlimited supplies of those things. Another thing that you have to get used to living out here on the road, or I had to get used to, is not taking as many showers. You get used to probably showering maybe once a week, unless you get lucky for some reason and have more access to showers. But generally, yeah, you're not taking as many showers out here. One of the quirky things about my bathroom is when I turn on the faucet in there, water comes out of my shower head and gives me an unintended extra shower. So what I do is I just brush my teeth and wash my hands in my kitchen sink and problem solved. It's an older camper, it's just one of the things that you have to deal with. I'm sure I can have that looked at and repaired, but I don't need to pay the extra expense right now when I have a solution. I have had the bathroom sink replaced since I owned it, and I've also had the plumbing in the back for the dump tanks replaced, and the water pump was the original water pump, so that has been replaced as well. After I purchased it, I also had a leak here over the bed, which I discovered when I was in Utah, so I had to have that repaired. So I have had to do some repair work on the camper since owning it. Speaking of the bedroom area, one of the things I love is I could fit a full queen size mattress, a regular mattress, in this area. I am really happy about that. I replaced the mattress right after I bought it, and I love my bed. A lot of people have mentioned to me that they would probably be claustrophobic up there, but I don't feel claustrophobic whatsoever. It's my little lair. I'm very comfortable up there. The only thing that is a pain is making that bed in that space. If I'm just making the bed, it takes me about 10 to 15 minutes. But if I'm actually changing the sheets after washing the sheets, it could probably take me about a half an hour. It's a very awkward space to maneuver around in up there. It has been just a steady light rain all day today. Speaking of weather and winter being on its way, this camper is not very well insulated. As I mentioned, it is the Lance Lite model, which means I think there's probably even less insulation than maybe their regular models. That means that when it's hot, it gets really hot, and when it's cold, it gets very cold. I do not have an air conditioning. It is wired for air conditioning. However, in order to use air conditioning anyways, you have to be plugged in or have a generator. I don't carry a generator. I don't really have the room for it. And I also don't carry an extra propane tank for that reason. I just don't have the room to carry it, especially in the back of my camper or the back of my truck, because I have lots of other supplies back there. So that means I usually head for cooler climates in the summer and warmer climates in the winter. And I also don't go anywhere where I'm plugged in very often, so there's no point in really having an air conditioning. So far, I really haven't had an issue. I mean, there have been days where I've been pretty hot in here, and I'll just have a fan running right on me, and just do whatever I can to try to stay cool. And then in the cooler months, I have my heater. I sleep with a sleeping bag over my bed. I normally don't turn the heater on unless it's, in the 30s. If it's in the 40s, I'm warm enough with a blanket and a sleeping bag over me all night long. And I'll usually put it on in the morning. I'll jump out of bed, turn it on, jump back in bed, wait till it warms up. And then once it's warmed up, I'll get out of bed. But I've been able to make it work. And it's all about, adjusting your lifestyle out here and making adjustments. You can adapt to anything. It's pretty amazing, the human spirit and how adaptable we are, and how we can just adapt to whatever our conditions are, and that's what I've done. I liken it very much to living in an old house. You have quirky things about living in an old home, and I like old homes. They have character. And I like my old home. It has its quirks, it has its challenges, but I have an ever-changing view. The view out my back door is constantly changing, and I get to travel. It takes me on amazing adventures. It feels comfortable. It feels like home when I get to come here at the end of a day hiking or adventuring and get to sleep in my own bed. And if you watch my video from Yosemite, I was just in awe of the fact that at the end of the day, I was in my own little home in Yosemite National Park. And sometimes I just am in awe of that, and I have the ability to do that. And I've really made this place feel like home. Now the truck that it sits on, my old 2002 Chevy Silverado, that is a story for another video. Oh boy, there's been a lot of work put into that baby, but it's a beast. Anyhow, thank you all so much for joining me. I really appreciate your support. Everyone who has supported the channel, whether it be a patron or anyone who's donated to PayPal or anyone who's supported in any way, shape, or form, thank you so much. I couldn't have done it without you. I couldn't do it without you. Also, by commenting, liking, and sharing my videos, that's a way you can support me. And if you subscribe to the channel as well, I very much appreciate it. I will see you all on the next adventure, and thank you so much. Thank you for joining me. See you soon. Bye-bye.